Monica is going to let us know when we're live. It's about a 15-second delay, so people can probably hear what I'm saying now in the public. But yeah, hopefully we're about to have people tuned in. Just give us a couple seconds. All right, we are on. All right, aloha everybody. My name is Raphael Bergstrom. I am the Executive Director for Sustainable Coastlines Hawaii. We're a nonprofit out here in Hawaii that inspires local communities to care for their coastlines. And we do that through hands-on beach cleanups, education in the classroom, and working hand in hand with business to reduce their single-use plastic impact. And I am being joined here today by a superstar panel of humans from all over the place, from Nebraska to Hawaii. And we're here to really talk story about the story of plastics, which I hope many of you were able to tune into through our links over this last week and the live streaming, or maybe you caught it on Discovery Channel on Earth Day. Either way, it's a very powerful documentary telling the story of plastics in a much deeper way. And so what we're gonna do with this talk story is introduce some incredible people who are working on plastics in the field, who have had experience collaborating with Sustainable Coastlines Hawaii or other organizations. And we're all gonna share our own personal story of plastic and how that relates to the story that we just watched in that documentary. So I'm just gonna go around with quick introductions and then we'll get into the story of plastics, but I'll let each person introduce themselves. They're, like I said, an incredible panel of people that I'm so honored that they're joining us now. So let's start with Doshi. Let us know who you are.
Hi, everyone. I'm Doshi. I am the Director of Partnerships for Algalita Marine Research and Education based out of Long Beach, California. And we're specifically focused on plastic pollution research and education among youth. I'm stoked to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Patty, how about you?
Sure. Hey everyone, my name is Pattiegonia. I am a drag queen and also an advocate in progress and an environmentalist in progress and so many other things in progress, but I'm very excited to be here. My journey with plastic started about at the time when I started doing drag, which is about 1.5 years ago, and just kind of encountering my waste every day, and that plastic was a really good gauge of me being in control of that or not, and it was just such a good entry point for me. And it's become even more important to me as I kind of pioneer my art of drag and seeing how I can incorporate elements of environmental topics and crises into that, including plastic. So here we are. Was really lucky to work with Sustainable Coastlines Hawaii this past fall on a documentary about plastic. They blew my mind. Their dedication to this is unbelievable. And I just got to see for myself firsthand on the beaches of Hawaii how real this problem is. So super excited to be here and thank you for having me. I feel very lucky.
Beautiful. Thank you for being here. We'll get more into that story of the documentary in a little bit here too. Nicole, do you want to introduce yourself?
Aloha, I'm Nicole Chatterson, the Director of Zero Waste Oahu, and we're working to help build and support a waste-free Hawaii. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Kevin, how about you?
Hi, thanks. My name's Kevin O'Brien. Yeah, thank you, Sustainable Coastlines, for putting this all together. It's really awesome little event and screening. I'm the president of a local Oahu nonprofit called the Papahānaumokuākea Marine Debris Project. And what we do is we focus on ensuring that large-scale marine debris cleanups happen in the area known as Papahānaumokuākea, which, if anybody viewing this isn't familiar with that area, it's the northwestern Hawaiian Islands, which is a super incredible uninhabited string of 10 islands that stretch for like 1,200 miles to the northwest of the main Hawaiian Islands. And it's maybe the most incredible place on the planet. And so we're focusing on the issue of marine debris in that place specifically to protect the wildlife and habitats up there. So happy to be here. Thank you.
Cliff.
Hey, aloha mai kako. Hello, everyone. I'm Cliff. I'm from the Big Island of Hawaii. I'm a surfer and a scientist, and I'm just really honored to be here amongst so much amazing individuals and hopefully can learn from everyone. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Kevin and Cliff. Max, how about you?
Aloha mai kako. My name is Max Phillips. I am an environmental attorney with the Center for Biological Diversity. My specialty is in endangered species law and the Clean Water Act, and I'm lucky to also be Sustainable Coastline Hawaii's attorney in an exciting lawsuit that we are teaser winning.
Awesome. We will definitely get into that in a bit too. Jacqueline, how about you?
Hi, I'm Jacqueline. I work for the Kokua Hawaii Foundation, and we focus on environmental education in the schools and communities over here in Hawaii. I'm stoked to be here. Thank you for having me, Sustainable Coastlines.
Absolutely. Thanks for being an incredible partner with Kokua Hawaii Foundation. And Kimi, how about you?
Hi, I am Kimi Werner. I am a spearfisher woman. And my story of plastic, I'd say the main story was just a few years ago with Jacqueline, actually, where we went on this trip with the 5 gyres and sailed from Bahamas to Bermuda and just collected samples of ocean water along the way. And that was when I realized that even in the cleanest waters, like the cleanest waters I've ever seen, and I've seen a lot of ocean, there's microplastics just contaminating it. And when I realized that, it kind of paralyzed me at first and made me feel like there wasn't much I could do. But when I got back to land, I started realizing how much we really can change our everyday choices, how much we can have bigger conversations so that we can change the bigger organizations that really need to change and, you know, stop this at the source. So that would be my very quick story of plastic.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. And yeah, we're going to come back to that now and talk a little deeper about more stories of plastic. No, it's perfect. It's where we're going with this. I want it to be an organic discussion. For all of you who are tuned in on YouTube Live, you can also type into the comments section, and Monica, our media manager for Sustainable Coastlines, is following along, and she'll be able to send questions over to me to ask the panelists after we get through some of these first questions also. So I guess I can kick off some more of this story of plastics also with a quick personal story for myself. As the now director of Sustainable Coastlines Hawaii, I grew up with parents who would wash out Ziploc bags and were avid composters and all these things in their lives. So I had these things ingrained in me, but I traveled around the world playing baseball for 5 years after undergrad before coming to study at University of Hawaii. And I studied natural resources management here. And right out of grad school, I got a job with the Surfrider Foundation, another one of our partners. And while I was appreciative of having a job, there was a point where I was thinking to myself, why do I care about plastics? There are so many bigger things in this world that are affecting us, whether it's climate change or sea level rise, which are associated, obviously. And I felt like maybe this was a small issue and I might be wasting my time. If you watch the story of plastics, there were some people who had that also discussion in there with themselves. And what I've come to realize is that is so far from the truth, because plastics are the gateway to a much larger understanding about the individual choices that we have in our lives and how those really can affect everything and permeate our whole world. And so through that just realization, I've come to see that focusing in on an issue or a topic is so important because it brings people into a movement. And if you start realizing that your single-use water bottle has an impact, then maybe you'll realize that every single thing that you do actually has an impact. So that's my story of plastic and why I continue to devote so much of my life to it. And the beach behind me, Kahuku Beach on Oahu, looks like that almost every day, no matter how much we clean it. So you can also see how big the issue is right here in Hawaii. So I'm gonna pass the torch on this too and ask Doshi, how about you? Tell us a little bit more about your story of plastic.
Absolutely. So I'm from a small farm town in Wisconsin, a place called Whitewater, Wisconsin. I lived there for 22 years of my life, and I moved out to California to be involved with the ocean and for a job. And I remember when I was 16 years old, my mom told me she saw something on TV about a floating island of trash out in the ocean. And it was maybe a minute-long conversation her and I had, where I thought it was a place that people were going on vacations to, as like a kind of a weird thing to do. And fast forward now, 14 years into the future, I had no idea I'd be as deeply involved in plastic pollution prevention as I am, working for the organization that discovered the trash island out in the Pacific that my mom was talking to me about in rural Wisconsin years ago. I was paddling for a wave in Venice Beach about 6 years ago now, and I got hit in the face with a food wrapper. And it was a literal slap in the face wake-up call to plastic pollution. I had never heard of plastic pollution before. And I got out of the water, saw plastic on the beach, went to my car, saw plastic in the gutter, started driving back to my apartment, and saw a literal trail of plastic all the way back to my apartment. And I knew I had to get involved. So I started volunteering with as many organizations in LA as I could. I started an Instagram account called Gnarly Beach Cleaner to spread awareness of plastic pollution in my own fun and vibrant way, to try to connect with people that wanted to see images of positivity and how to create solutions from there moving forward. And after a few years of volunteering as much as I could, I got offered a spot on Captain Charles Moore's research vessel to go on a sailing expedition from Easter Island to Chile. And a year later, after that expedition, Algalita offered me a job as their education coordinator. 2 years later now, I'm their director of partnerships, helping with to build global coalitions, working on a local level with policy, statewide level with policy, and actually earlier this year, helped to introduce the first national comprehensive plastics legislation at Capitol Hill in DC called the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act of 2020. So not only do we work with youth, but we try to build as comprehensive partnerships as we can across the entire plastics life cycle, from fossil fuel extraction to disposal, to try to educate youth about the truth of what's going on. And up to this point, that's my story of plastic. It's only just begun, Ralph. Yeah, it's only just begun.
Only just begun. I'm with you on that. Thank you, Doshi, and an amazing story. And we'll come back to some of your work with youth and policy and the experiences that you had and some of the things that we saw in the movie. We've got a question already about youth education from Jenny on YouTube Live that we'll come back to that in a few. So hang tight with us, Jenny. We'll get to that question for sure. Patty, do you want to dive a little deeper into your story of plastic?
Sure. My drag persona, Pattiegonia, was actually born in the backcountry on a trail, the Continental Divide Trail in Colorado. And so nature has always been a part of Patty's life, inherently in the name. But I feel like alongside the journey for me of becoming a drag queen has also been me realizing my responsibility to nature, and to being a steward of nature, and to being an ally to Mother Nature, my mother. It's kind of really worked hand in hand. And I feel like I can't do this work and I can't be a drag queen out in nature if I'm not advocating out in nature. So plastics for me really, like I said, was like a firsthand thing where I'm facing it every day in my life, but yet also I kind of realized was a super beautiful key to unlock with the people that follow me and interact with me to make it relatable to them as well. And I think to really be really real about my struggle with plastic use and how much it is and was at the time even more a part of my life, and to kind of document that journey over the past year has been really big chance to just peel the layer back of, I'm not a zero waste human over here. I am making mistakes and failing every day, but I'm trying even harder every day. And if I can hold on to that 1%, and that I'm like giving 1% more shits every day, like that's enough for me. And I think that that's a really beautiful and like relatable place for a lot of people. So it's been a very big journey for my community and for me to learn more about plastic, and to learn that for me, coming from Nebraska, a completely landlocked state, my daily decisions, even if it doesn't involve necessarily buying plastic. If I am also buying something like fish at a grocery store, then there's probably a ghost net floating out there in the Pacific Ocean because of that fish that I'm eating. So crazy to realize we're all really connected. And I think that also plastic is a huge part of the beauty industry and the makeup industry. So in the drag industry, so huge strides to take in those areas. And I'm excited to like be a lifelong learner in plastic. And I think that plastic is a really beautiful, just like you mentioned, Roth, entry point for a lot of people to start to care more about Mother Nature. And that's what we're here to do. So that is me.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And I hope that people who are tuned in and viewing, that they're seeing the diversity of perspectives that are on this panel, and that the idea going forward is to figure out how do we connect in more minds and more segments of the population. And I hope that all the stories, you think about that as people are sharing their stories and how important that is too. So, and we'll come back to sharing some of the work that we did with Patty and the videos. I'll be sharing some videos from all of our different panelists in a few moments here. But Nicole, do you want to continue on the thread of your story of plastic?
Sure. So I grew up in a small town outside of LA called Palmdale, which many of you may know from Afroman. He sings quite a bit about Palmdale. And the home I grew up in was about a mile away from our landfill. So some of the happiest memories of my childhood were going out our front door and wandering in the desert. So Palmdale is the high desert. My sister and I would go out there and play. And they were also some of the most frustrating memories of my childhood, because what happens oftentimes when you're next to a landfill is, for multiple reasons, people come and dump there. And so we'd be going on these epic outdoor adventures, and there's mattresses and there's water heaters and there's cans of paint, and there are all these things that people have trouble getting rid of. And so this concept of waste was with me from a young age. And fast forward several years, I went to Cal State Long Beach for my undergrad. I ended up studying environmental science and policy, and wasn't necessarily planning to work on trash. And a friend of mine sent me a job post with Algalita Marine Research Foundation. And that reconnected me back to these childhood experiences of trash, and allowed me to go out and see the North Pacific gyre that Doshi mentioned. So I saw the floating mass of trash and spent 7 weeks out there sampling. And every time we put in a net, microplastic came out. Every time you looked overboard, you saw macroplastic, refrigerators, tires, plastic bottles. It was mind-blowing. And it infuriated me all over again. And thankfully, when I get mad, I get motivated. So here I am now working on this issue. This is, what my life's work is dedicated to, and happy to be doing it.
Awesome. Thank you, Nicole. And thank you, Zero Waste Oahu, for being an amazing partner to us too. Let's continue. Kevin, do you want to share more about your story of plastics?
Sure. I grew up on the mainland in Montana, in the 80s and the 90s, and it was not really a hot button issue over there at the time. My mom was kind of an early adopter of recycling, so she would collect our milk jugs and drive them an hour and a half to the nearest recycling center in the next town, down the valley. But I came out to Hawaii when I was 18 to go to UH, and I was an undergrad at UH, and started learning about the Northwestern Hawaiian Islands. And it was kind of this mythical place that was supposed to be so amazing and everybody wanted to go to, and that the only way anybody knew how to get up there was to join the NOAA Marine Debris Cleanup Team. And so I kind of made that my goal because I wanted to go see this cool place. And so it wasn't so much that I was really super concerned about marine debris or didn't really even know much about the issue, but got hired on and went up there. And I knew we were going to clean up debris, like pull fishing nets off the reef and kind of clean up some plastics from the beach. But, the first day that we launched off the side of the ship and drove the boat into Laysan Island, which is about 700 miles from here, I was so excited, and got to the beach there, and it was like the most incredible place I'd ever seen. And it was just strewn with plastic. It was incredible. Like I had no idea the scale. And like, so that was a place that was supposed to be the most incredible marine like ecosystem on the planet. And here it was just cluttered with stuff. And so, you know, no humans even live there. So for me, that was like, whoa, this is a huge problem. If it can make it all the way out here and there aren't even any people that live here. And so, number one, I really grew to love the place, and I've been back there more than a dozen times over the years. And that's really driven my goal to make the issue of plastic pollution my work, mostly because I really love a place and I want to protect it. So that's sort of my journey to where I am now with plastic.
Awesome. Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate the work that you do. And to just break up the talking for a little second here, I'm actually going to share just a quick 1-minute video that Kevin shared with us. It kind of puts into perspective some of the images that you'll see up there and why it's so powerful. So give me 1 second, I'll play this for you guys. Can you all see the screen?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
The way I like to explain it is, imagine the most beautiful, picturesque beach in the entire world. That in your mind, it's your happy place that you go to on a rough day or maybe a cold, rainy day. And you just want to have a moment of peace. That's your happy place. Now imagine that happy place covered in plastics debris. And that is what these beaches look like. There's no humans living on these islands, but there's plastic washing up from out in the ocean. And there's nobody there to clean it up until we come along and remove this plastic from the beach.
Yeah, some powerful imagery there. I appreciate you sharing that with us, Kevin, and we'll dive a little deeper into those experiences that you've had up there and what that means. Let's keep hearing some more stories of plastic though. Max, do you want to share your story of plastic with us?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I grew up in Hawaii, and my father was one of the most incredible watermen. I mean, he could get on any canoe, any board, surf any wave with his slipper. He was the best. And one of his favorite beaches to body surf at, the most amazing childhood memories of coming out and my hair just being covered in limu and seaweed and trying to get it out for, I don't know, the next 2-3 weeks, always just finding little pieces. And when I came back home from college on the continent, I went back to that same beach and I saw it from up above and it just looked cherry. It looked like there were so many shells washed up and everything looked ripe. And I got down there and it was all plastic. It was all plastic. And so the same water, and just, you know, we talk about shifting baselines as environmentalists, as scientists, as attorneys. And in my little tiny lifetime, in a couple of years, you know, my childhood beach, the place that my father was raised at, was now just wrecked. And so I think at that stage, I realized I had to do something. At that point, I was doing environmental science as my undergrad and was thinking I was going to go on and get my PhD from Scripps. No one was listening to scientists. When I asked who they listened to, they said attorneys. So I got my law degree. So here we are.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think there's so many stories probably around from people who have seen the change over time. Kahi Pokaro, who started Sustainable Coastlines, tells that story oftentimes too, about setting his feet in the sand at Kailua Beach where he grew up and not even having realized for so long how much microplastics were in the sand and having that exact same moment of, oh my gosh, I have to do something about this now. And that was the birth of Sustainable Coastlines, with lots of other friends in his living room having some beers together. And here we are almost 10 years later, hosting this amazing panel. But all right, let's keep going. Cliff, do you want to tell us a little bit more of your story of plastics?
Yeah, so I grew up here on the Big Island, and I've had the privilege to travel around the world quite a bit. And outside of doing a lot of surfing, I also am really just like really proud of where my people come from here in Hawaii. And I hope it's like proud, but like innocent, like a reverent way. Like I really have a lot of the generation above me. I don't know if they're as proud like my dad's generation, and for sure my grandma's generation. I don't think they were as encouraged to be Native people in Hawaii. It was seen as maybe not as special as it is when I was growing up. So I have a lot of just value for my heritage and for my ancestry. And I didn't know how to communicate a lot of this connection that we have with the environment, with the natural world, in ways that people could really understand outside of our culture. Because a lot of cultures, I feel, have this deep connection to the natural world, but maybe they don't have, or maybe people don't remember the way to articulate that connection. So an example is something like we say like malama aina or aloha aina, which whether you want to translate or not, it's that feeling that you have when you see some type of hurt happening to like the land or the ocean, and you feel like that's your family, like you feel like someone's hurting your family. So that exists. When I was growing up, I didn't know how to articulate that. So I decided to look at science as a way to communicate the human environmental connections that we have. So I've spent the better part of my life being formally trained in conventional science through analytical chemistry. And that's just a way for me to help learn how to communicate what our connection is with nature on a molecular level. So that's what I've been doing outside of surfing. I definitely try to explore how do we humans interact with nature on a molecular level. And from a chemical standpoint, it's very obvious that it's difficult to separate ourselves from nature on a molecular level through the biochemistry and also through the chemistry. And it's also very difficult to avoid plastics altogether when we're talking about synthetic polymers derived from carbon, mostly petroleum based. It's so incredibly difficult. So how Patty was speaking about, you know, there's no zero waste person really. I believe that. How can we, plastic is so prevalent and ubiquitous throughout the human condition today, and not just the human condition, every environmental species, that I'm just really trying to learn how to find out where it is so I can minimize either exposure or negative contribution. So I don't know if that was too much nerd for you there, but that's my story, I guess, in 2.5 minutes.
No, that's fantastic. Thank you, Cliff, and thank you for just being a person of wisdom to that you are always open to sharing with me, with our organization and beyond. So we'll come back to some of that too, and how to transcend boundaries, which I think that you alluded to in that what you're saying there, but I'd like to dive in a little bit more to that too as we come back to it. So mahalo for that. All right, Jacqueline, you want to tell us a little more about your story?
Yeah. So I was born and raised on the North Shore of Oahu, where I was lucky enough to be born into a very environmentally conscious family and very water-oriented family. My story of plastics briefly started when I went to Kokua High School, which is right across the beach from one of the dirtiest beaches in Hawaii. And I would grow up going over there with my friends and seeing more and more plastics accumulating on the shoreline. And it really just made me mad and really upset as to why this was happening on my home coastline. And at the time, I didn't really have the connection to the global issue of plastic pollution. I thought it was more locally based. And it wasn't until the sailing trip that I went on with Kimi that she briefly spoke to, where we had the chance to sail through part of the Atlantic Gyre. And every single day we were out on the boat pulling sample and sample of more microplastics. And it looked like the clearest blue water I've ever seen. We were swimming in it. You didn't see any plastics. And every day we're pulling more and more plastics aboard. And after that, it kind of concreted in me my drive to dedicate my life and my free time into helping fight for plastic pollution initiatives. And it's brought me to work for Breo, a company over in California that recycles fishing nets, end-of-life fishing nets, into 100% recycled plastic material. And now it's brought me back home where I'm working for the Kokua Hawaii Foundation and focusing mostly with their plastic-free Hawaii program. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jacqueline. And I'd love to dive in a little deeper to your time with Boreo and some questions coming up too. So thank you for sharing that. And so to continue the stories of plastic, we're all the way to the end with Kimi. But Kimi, before you go, I would love to just share another quick clip from a video that you were a part of and that Kahi was a part of also. And we can play some of your story of plastics off of that also as being a new mother and how that comes into this too. So I'm going to share a little clip here. This. You ready to see that?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
We got sold on this whole throwaway society, this whole throwaway idea that the more civilized you are, the more convenient everything should be. You shouldn't have to do dishes if you can throw them away. You know, you shouldn't have to take care of something if you can throw it away, and we'll make it cheap enough where you can buy another. But there is no away. There's no such place as a way.
So Kimi, I would love to, I mean, and this is all obviously part of your story of plastic and finding a way in the smog of the sea, but if you want to dive a little deeper into that story, I'd love to.
Sure, I'd love to. I think, you know, as a kid, so I grew up in a rural part of Haiku, Maui, and nature definitely, like everyone, was a huge part of my life. But I think, you know, after hearing that clip, a big thing is that I did believe that there was a place called Away when I was a kid, because of all these campaigns I would see put out. You know, I would see stop littering, litter bugs me. And because I love nature so much, I would just hop on, you know, any little bandwagon that seemed to be on nature's side and be like, yeah, stop littering, throw it away. You know, that's the problem, is that we're not throwing things away, we're littering, and that's the issue here. And then it turned into, you know, recycle. Don't just throw it away and leave it in a landfill, but recycle. And I kind of, you know, I would go along with these things that I would hear, but I think in a way it just felt like, you know, repeating words, repeating slogans to me, and it didn't really ever hit home. And then, like I said, when I went on that trip, for me, maybe it was the fact that I didn't see this huge island of plastic. I didn't see, you know, just something just like littered with crazy pieces of plastic, because had I seen that, I think my mind would have went to what I've been sold since a kid, where, oh, well, we have to clean it up and take it away, you know, and that's how we solve it. And instead, when I saw the cleanest blue ocean ever, and I just kind of thought like, wow, this is a expensive boat ride to come out here when there's nothing to write home about. But when we started doing those samples and turned out there's microplastics every time we collected a sample, that was when I just realized, like, holy moly, like, this is not a cleanup issue, and it's way worse than that. And microplastics are absolutely everywhere. And when I got off that boat and I was kind of let back into the real world, I remember flying home and I just went to get a cup of coffee from the airport, and just seeing, like, you know, I'm trying to make better choices, but just seeing the plastic lid you're supposed to put on it, you know, that you're gonna use for what, 5 minutes, right? The plastic stirry stick that you use for literally 2 seconds. Those little half and half cups where you use for like maybe 3 seconds. And it just dawned on me that that it's crazy how I never realized that before, and that we're kind of trained to not even think for ourselves in that way. And I totally agree that we can't right now be plastic free, but it also just became a huge eye opener that we can definitely do better than using something for you know, a fraction of a second that's going to end up in our oceans forever.
Yeah, mahalo for sharing that story. It's so spot on, and I think there's so much that was brought up in the story of plastic about what has been fed to us as the answer, as propaganda, as it turns out, and from decades upon decades, from the beginnings of the Keep America Beautiful campaign to really putting the burden on us as the people for being the problem of littering and not the actual plastics themselves. So now that you've all shared just your basics of the story of plastic, I'd love to dive a little deeper in with you from some of the things that you shared. And I think a really good transition, I'm not going to keep going in the order that we've been going in, but Nicole, I think this is a great place for you to come in after what Kimi just shared about that myth of recycling. And so much of your work that you're doing at Zero Waste Oahu is about breaking myths, about the issues of incineration and recycling themselves. So can you just share on that, on what you've learned and maybe some solutions going forward?
Sure, yeah. I think a good place to start with that is this concept of zero waste. We've heard it come up a couple times, and how it's impossible given the society we live in to approach that. It's, you know, the waste is microscopic, the waste is macroscopic. How do we start to move away from that? And one thing that I think is really powerful in a zero waste framework is you're reclaiming the idea that we don't make things to become waste. We're not spending the water resources, the land resources. We're not exposing humans to chemicals in the case of plastic in order to make something that should be used for 1 second, like Kimi said, and then thrown away. So the idea is, how do you reframe everything you're using into a resource? Everything you touch is as valuable. And in terms of what recycling and in the case of Oahu and many other places, incineration have done for us, is they validate this idea in certain circumstances that you use something once and then it should go away. It should be managed as waste, and recycling is a part of waste management. They're upstream of recycling. There's reduction, reuse. We're all familiar with these R's, but we spend such little time up there because most of our communities have spent millions or billions of dollars building landfills, incinerators, recycling systems. And so the financial incentive to focus there is huge. And it also prevents us from having to look deeply at what we're buying and who is pushing us to buy things, because the answer, like Kimi mentioned, is in the recycling bin. To be Oahu centric for a moment, one of the things I see a lot in the discussions I have is we don't have a trash problem. You don't see a ton of litter on Oahu. You see a lot of marine debris washing up, which we've sort of said it's not our fault, it's other people. And folks feel good about the fact that you can take the trash we do make and burn it and make energy. And the way we've written our state renewable energy policies is that we're considering this trash renewable energy. So we mark it down as a good thing. And the power that has had on getting a lot of folks to ignore the fact that this waste has an impact is huge. So for every one piece of trash we make, 70 times that amount of waste has been created upstream. So if you take a cell phone, for example, there have been 70 cell phones worth of trash to get the cell phone to me. The cool thing is I can keep reusing the cell phone for years. Then when you think about something like a single-use plastic water bottle or packaging that you use for a second, or a stirring stick, you start to wonder, is it really worth it to use a stirring stick for a second when it took that much waste to create it in the first place, that much energy to create it in the first place? So yeah, I think reevaluating the way we manage our waste downstream is critical to placing the issues we're facing at the forefront.
Yeah, thank you for all of that knowledge. I think there was a part in the story of plastics where they talk about how plastics are driven by supply and not by demand, which I think is pretty fascinating statement. We're not necessarily demanding it. We're producing so much oil, extracting so much oil that we have to do something with it. So we create plastics, and it forces us into these loops that we're in right now. So I think that the perspectives that you just brought up are so important to consider as we're using all of these things.
Ralph, may I add another quick perspective there? If you're thinking about climate change, the production of plastic contributes to climate change. The degradation of plastic on our beaches, we're finding, contributes to climate change. When we burn our plastic in an incinerator and call it clean energy, it's still contributing to climate change. And the numbers on Oahu are showing for every 1 megawatt hour, which is a unit of energy, for every 1 megawatt hour of trash fuel we use, it's twice as bad as our coal plant. So we talk here about trash as this incredible resource for offsetting coal, and it's not doing better things on the back end. And I think that's an important, it's all connected in these tough conversations that we need to have.
Yeah, thank you for adding that. I think we all need to realize incineration is not the solution to this in any way. That's not an excuse. I'd love to continue. We'll come back to you about this topic too, but just a thread in here, that documentary we all know was so heavy. There was a lot in there that was just overwhelming. And one of the questions that came through was from Mallory, a senior in high school who's going to college for environmental science in the fall. And the idea is just, what's the best path to take to get involved in ending plastic pollution? And I think that all of if we can all consider that in our responses going forward, and just weave that into our thought trains, I think it's a really great place to go too. And so I'm curious on the business side of things. So Jacqueline, I'd love to bring you back in here too, because we talk about this giant business of plastic, and Kokua Hawaii Foundation does an incredible job of educating youth. And I think we also know that there's a struggle to educate adults. Youth seem to be doing pretty well. We'll talk to Doshi about that too. But what has your experience as the business outreach manager for Kokua and your work with Borreo, how do we bring business along on this journey?
Yeah, so I truthfully think it's a pretty similar approach to how we educate the youth through Kokua's youth programs. First and foremost, we need to educate them on the issues around plastic pollution in a fun and engaging way to not make it seem like this too big of an issue where they can't take individual action into creating their own tangible solutions. So we don't want to scare people away. That's never fun. Secondly, we need to arm them with the tools in order to make these changes, whether that's single-use plastics alternatives, more sustainable materials, like giving them access to recycled plastics or better materials to substitute out for the plastics in the first place. Or if it's educating them on how to get involved in plastic pollution legislation, like the amazing Extended Producer Responsibility Act that Doshi and the Algalita crew have been pushing forward. And I also think it's really important to establish a sense of community when you're trying to make behavior changes, whether that's adults, kids, or within a business. So having that support group so that when you're going through these changes, you can reach out and ask for help in whatever you're trying to achieve. And I think at Borreo, they kind of are making changes from the back end by giving consumers the power to make better choices by, if you go to the store and you're trying to buy, let's say, like a skateboard, like one of the first products Borreo has made, you can see a conventional board made out of virgin plastic, or you could see this 100% recycled fishing net board that has an end-of-life solution in place. And you could start hopefully getting that curiosity and those questions about why is this board made from virgin plastic? What is virgin plastic? Why is this board made from recycled plastics? What's an end-of-life solution? So kind of creating change on the consumer end by empowering them to make better choices by giving them those products that can lead to better decisions down the line, I think is one way. So yeah, let me know if you want me to elaborate on any of those themes.
No, I appreciate it. That's good for now. We can come back to them, but for people who don't know about Borrego too, go and check them out on their website. That would be a good start. And yeah, do you want to add something to that?
Oh, just Borrego is a company that focuses on, I think I spoke to it briefly, but end of life fishing nets, and they have a program down in South America where they collect. They pay the fishermen, the fisheries for the nets, and they return it into 100% recycled plastic material through a traceable and transparent supply chain. But yeah, check them out on their website. They have some great animations that go through their supply chain and their recycling processes.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting piece of all of this puzzle, because we partner with Borrego, we partner with Parlay for the Oceans, and the upcycling concepts are a really challenging one to wrestle with, because again, we're creating perhaps another plastic product after it was out there. But ultimately, we have to make these decisions. We have all this marine debris that's probably going to be coming into our shores for decades, and it's either burn it, landfill it, or try and do something again with it. I think it's all about the education that comes with that story. And I think that a lot of the people on this call are helping that to educate people about the topics. And I want to take it from that. You brought up something in the beginning, and how do we let a lot more people into the movement? And the next series of people that we're going to have share, I think, are really doing an incredible job with that. And I'm going to go back to a video. This is of Doshi, and Doshi, I'll follow up with some questions, but Doshi is just a creative genius for getting this to students and to the public in general. So let's just see what Doshi has to share.
Far from genius, bro.
I'm Dr. D. Call me Dr. Dude. Don't be rude, just respect the platitude as I take you on a journey, better yet a trip, to solve plastic pollution and rewrite the transcript. Talking solutions, I want you to relate, to understand constraints of polyhydroxyalkanoate, PHA, that's what I meant to say. Call me Kahipokaro because I'm known to parlay with plastics industry, like Down ACC, not a scientist, but Charlie Mobile dropped the chemistry. Story of plastic, the movement has arrived. Earth Data Revolution narrative was televised. Hit stop, rewind, listen to the rhyme. Feeling like Jay Nichols because I rep the blue mind, and I promise to never hesitate to educate youth by opening the floodgate. Algalita, my team, better yet my squad. Been around before the first edition of the iPod. Nonprofit work, so all my rhymes are free. Shout out to the legendary youth activist Dyson Sheep. What's the matter? Do you want more? Become a wayfinder and continue to explore. Think global with solutions on a local level. I'll continue to lace lyrics on the bass and treble. Freestyle Fridays, welcome to the show. Always make it fun to help you break the status quo. I'm stoked to the core, better check my demeanor when you're kicking freestyles with the gnarly beach cleaner. What? Remember to always make it fun and to stay stoked. Peace.
Doshi, amazing. And I think why I wanted to share that too is, like I said, the ability to bring people in and have fun with it. And the question I want to ask about this though is, you've been on the ground in some of the places we saw in the story of plastic, in Indonesia, in the Philippines, where a way ends up being. And how do you go through an experience like that where it's so heavy, and then produce something like that and relate kids and bring people into the movement, and it's not just about scaring them, but having fun with it? Just a little perspective on that.
Yeah, it's a good question. And just so everybody who's listening, for reference, what he was talking about in the locations that I was on the ground for, on location for filming, was in Manila, Philippines, and in the Bay of Manila there, where you saw the fishers pulling plastic out of their nets, and the opening scene where they had that drone that came out, and you saw that big, almost mini island of plastic in the Bay area there. That actually was that plastic collected from there being seagrass there, and one piece caught on, another piece caught on, and then eventually just kept collecting. And so that shot, I was on one of those boats there when it's zooming out, and I was we're in East Java, Indonesia, in the Surabaya area where Perigi Arasandi was. where you just saw mounds of plastic trash in front of people's homes. And I didn't know anything about that until I was there. And it blew my mind. The first place Priggy took us to when we stepped foot off the plane was to an open field. And at that open field, I was probably one of the first white people, tall, skinny white person that some of those people had ever seen. I just had people running up to me to take photos with me. And I was like, oh, this is what it feels like to be a celebrity. All right, cool. And everybody had a smile on their face. These were waste pickers who were picking through the trash, but they all had a smile on their face. And half that field of trash was actually burning. It was on fire. It was smoking. And they had already picked through it of trying to find plastics of value to sell into the informal recycling economy. And they make about $1.50, $2 a day. But the previous day, one of the waste pickers found $100, a $100 bill in US currency, which brought more people from the community out to pick up. And they were telling jokes to each other. They were laughing with each other. The whole family there was picking through trash. And it made me realize that even though this is one of the most serious issues we've ever dealt with on the face of the planet in regards to human existence, that people still have their livelihoods. People still need to survive. People still need to find ways to laugh. They still need to find ways to smile, even if they're living in those situations. And like what Max said in regards to the shifting baselines is this has been going on for so long in places like Indonesia that there are youth now that have never known a different world. And they wake up every morning, they smell burning trash, they see piles of plastic out on the road, and they still need to go to school. They still need to try to form relationships with each other, and they need to try to have fun, and they need to try to stay positive. And so for me, getting into the plastics field, as I said before in my story of plastic, was through fun and positivity. And I had the opportunity to have Priggy, who was in the film, and his daughter Thara out for our 10th annual International Youth Summit, and they spent a week with me here after the summit and stayed in my studio apartment, so we got to know each other better than we already did. And the last thing Priggy said to me when I dropped him off at the airport, got out of my car, gave him a hug, the last thing he said to me was, "Doshi, you're our vitamin." And that really hit me hard, where it made me feel even more responsible, and it made me feel like the plastics movement has entrusted me with the firsthand experiences that I've had and the knowledge that I have from being in the movement. They've entrusted me with that to use the energy that I have to continue to spread the message in as positive manner as I can. So my dad's message to me was be blissful. My mom always sends me, I'm looking at a sign right now that she sent me that says, smile, happy looks good on you. She sent me that for Christmas, not realizing she sent me the same sign the previous Christmas. So I actually have two of them. But I come from a family of people that tried to be as happy as they could. And I think that just carried over to me. And I'm just a naturally stoked dude. So I think it's my responsibility to continue to spread the stoke, to try to hook more people and meet them at their level, right? And if we're not making it fun, people aren't going to want to get involved from my perspective. Now, there's a lot of people out there that don't connect with my message. They don't connect. They want to see as Nicole said, she gets angry, she gets motivated, right? There's a lot of people that want to see those images that get them angry. And I get angry. I tear up every time I see the story of plastic. I've seen it around 40 times now, and I still tear up every time. And when I talk to people about the film, it's feeling emotions, and it's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel angry, and it's also okay to feel happy. It's to have a positive outlook on solutions that are being created from it.
Thanks, Doshi. Thanks for your stoke on all of it, and to be vulnerable, to say that you cry about it, and bring people in through the positiveness overall, though. And I want to continue the thread of inviting people into this movement. And Patty, I'm gonna go to you. And first, again, I'd love to share another clip. This is a project that Patty came out to Hawaii that she mentioned before and worked on with Sustainable Coastlines Hawaii. And you can see the full videos through our YouTube channel. Also, we've highlighted them in our favorites. But this is a little clip from Everything to Lose, and then I'll follow up with some questions for that.
Now I know what you're saying. It's just a drop in the bucket. It's just one plastic bag, one straw, so suck it. Well, suck on this. Right now, there are more plastic pieces in the ocean than stars in the Milky Way. A billion plastic bags being used every single day. We dress this mess in political gains, in power change and profits made. Our mother says to go upstairs and put on something new. So come out of the closet and put on your boots. We've got a ton of work to do.
Dear Mother Nature, dear Mother Nature, dear Mother Nature, I love you so much. I love you. I love you. I love you. Make me do better, to step up and take care of you, to save and protect your beautiful sky. You've been there to listen when I've struggled through my darkest days. Loving you has taught me how to love myself.
Give us a chance to show our gratitude.
You are beautiful. You are loved. We will protect you.
So another just incredibly powerful piece. And I guess my question within this too is, you're reaching a whole different audience than I think most of us have done. And I'm really curious. I mean, being in Nebraska right now is so far from Hawaii and from the ocean in general. And what were the reactions you got to creating Everything to Lose? And do you think that it brought a new voices into the movement?
Yeah, good question. My whole thinking around all of this is that to invite everyone outside, because if everyone isn't invited outside to see how beautiful nature is, and to realize that they are a part of nature too, and to realize that they can also have an impact and they can be a part of the solution and a part of loving on Mother Nature, then it's not going to happen. I think that queer people and youth have been left out of the conversation for really long. And I think we're seeing huge things change with youth being involved, and now with queer people being involved into the climate conversation as well. I never knew there were so many queer people in the sciences, and especially even related to the plastics crisis, and just to and the environmental movement in general. And I think that I could not echo what Doshi said enough. I totally believe that the environmental movement will totally be TikToked and Instagrammed and entertained, and that is going to be, and already is, such a beautiful wave of creativity out there. But when the film came out, I think it was a big aha moment for a lot of people, including myself, including so many people that I live next door to, about how related we all are to plastic, and how plastic unites us, and how nature unites us, and how we can all have a part in the solution. I think of that film as Patty's most Greta moment, because that was the most angry and frustrated I've ever been in my life after seeing all of the plastics on the beach. So I got mad and I got motivated. But I also wanted to use my art form of drag to help relay these messages to people. I kind of think that a lot of people's formulas you're seeing here, all these speakers, and here's the thing, a lot of you that are here listening, it's all about taking action. It's all about education. And I think it's all about making some damn good art too, and making some really impactful, motivational, reachable pieces of content and of communication. And I think that yeah, I don't know. I think the future for a lot of us, if not all of us, will be to combine this environmental and plastics and wanting to make an impact sphere with our other spheres that we are so passionate about. And the more that those can overlap or triple overlap or Venn diagram in the middle is where it's going to be incredible. And I think at the root of that is so much of your uniqueness, but you're also going to get shit on it for it too. I've never received more hate in my life than after that film came out, because the outdoor movement or the outdoor community in the outdoor industry is completely homophobic in so many ways. So I think it was an everything moment when the film came out, and I think the reaction was completely widespread. Everything from you're a poser and you're totally fake and you are totally hypocritical, to which I said, hell yes, let's lean into that. Let's totally have a conversation about how I took a plane to Hawaii to make this film. Like, I'd love to talk to you about that. I love that dissonance, all the way to like people encountering drag for the first time in their life, to people seeing microplastics for the first time in their life. So it was a really beautiful process. And I think that I'll be really excited for the future for the environmental movement to start taking more stabs at the entertainment area and to really making some incredible films like The Story of Plastic. I think that films and communication is totally key.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you. And thank you for putting yourself out there in the way that you do, and being willing to accept that blowback from people, and people should also know how Patty reacted to that and donating for every hateful comment, donating back to the nonprofits who she worked with, and following that, just from this project, got such a groundswell of people supporting the organizations, including Sustainable Coastlines, that raised over $100,000 at the end of last year to be split amongst these organizations. I mean, just an incredible thing that you did for us and for the world in general. So thank you for bringing your art into this conversation too and connecting us.
Thank you for bringing your brains, because otherwise I'd be a very stupid drag queen. So it takes a village.
Well, I want to continue the thread of connecting, and Cliff, I want to share just a video about your Cliff Notes too, the introduction to it, and I'll get to why I want to share that too, because you're such a renaissance man in how you transcend boundaries, and I think there's a really interesting conversation in that following what Patty just said too. So I'll share this real quick and then we'll ask you some questions.
I'm Cliff, a surfer, scientist, and journalist from Hilo, Hawaii. I'm traveling outside of my lineup to give you the quick and dirty on the most unconventional ways to protect our planet. One part surf, one part science, all part fun. Welcome to the Cliff Notes. Doesn't have to be anything more than a little just idea.
Like gentle, like they move.
She's like almost like just perfect enough, yo.
I love it. And I guess my question for you from this too is, from a doctor, from a scientist, a chemist, from a professional surfer, from a Hawaiian, you have all of these incredible perspectives. And I love that you also got in there too, the fun part of it, because you always tell me we got to keep it fun with Sustainable Coastlines. But across those, I mean, very different places, very different groups of people in the world. And I'm curious if you shared a little bit in your opening story, but do you see plastic pollution as a opportunity to unite across different groups? And do you think there's a story and a thread there that you've seen shared amongst all the spaces you live in?
Yeah, I mean, I think that plastic, the solution, I think, for the plastic pollution, I don't know if that's where we're all going to come together on, but I think it's a very nice starting point for us to talk about how it affects our life. Like, it's just so complicated, you know, and there's so many different people with so much different perspectives living in a wholly different world. Like, I feel I'm very privileged growing up in the sense that I was allowed access to clean water and clean air and also traditional stories. Like, I know a lot of people across this planet, they weren't privileged to that. And that's kind of like, it kind of is a sad thing to me, you know, and I don't want to like hold that against someone that they don't know their old stories, or they don't know what it's like to drink out of a river. Like, I'm not going to hold that against someone because maybe they live in the middle of South Central, you know, LA or something. And that's just not fair, you know, for me to use my privilege in that way. So I think for me, recognizing my kind of native privilege as a way to help just learn more from different perspectives, and not try to force feed my own agendas on people. And yeah, I think it's just a nice coming together, even though we may not all be trying to get to the same place. I think we're trying to move in the same direction. And with that, I think it's pretty powerful to see this kind of wave of people, no matter if it's just getting more people outdoors, or like now getting more people indoors. I don't know, like it's all about trying to, you know, I guess find the common ground. And I think that's pretty powerful for us. And it's like community driven, you know.
Yeah, thanks, brother. Appreciate that. I think that there's so much opportunity in all of this to find that common ground too. And it doesn't have to be the piece of plastic itself that is the common ground, but there's stories weaved throughout all of this that really can connect us all.
And like people that like I feel maybe even in the just forum, like we all have maybe similar perspectives. Like, how do we get people who aren't willing to give up their plastic water bottle? How do we get people who are very intent on flying somewhere? Or, you know, I ride surfboards that are mostly made out of petroleum-based carbon. You know, it's like, how do we get in those conversations, the uncomfortable ones, where people don't want to hear your perspective, and, you know, take that criticism, like how, you know, a lot of the people have found Doshi and Patty, and how do we take that and make stronger? And it's inspiring to try.
Absolutely. Thank you for trying. Thank all of you for trying. And I think that those are some of the biggest questions. It's what Nicole is focused on in Zero Waste Oahu a lot. How do we reach into the audiences that maybe aren't already connected to it? And I think it's probably a question for all of us to continue to try and seek answers to, and listen to other stories on how we can bring these ideas into their lives in meaningful ways too. And in the spirit of storytelling, Kimi, I'd love to come back to you too. I think that you've, through the videos that I've seen, through conversations with you, you love storytelling. You've had generations of storytelling in your life. But what I'm really also curious is that I think through that and through your connections to those stories, you've become this icon of this incredible spearfisher and freediver, but so much behind it is the ideas in subsistence living and being able to support yourself. And I'd love if you could speak to that and what that means to you in your life, and connect that also into the plastic pollution movement as a solution.
I guess, I mean, when it comes to spearfishing, you know, when I was a little kid, I got introduced to the idea of freediving and spearfishing because that's how my dad got food, and that's how he would put food on the table. And my parents didn't have a lot of money, you know, in my very early childhood days, and so that's how they would do it. But even when it became something where we no longer had to do because you know, our survival depended on it or whatever, you know, because my parents started making more money, I think, and they were able then to like go to stores and go to restaurants and go to things like that. But I think the reason why the idea of it always fascinated me, and as a kid, it wasn't even so much like, oh, I want to be self-sustainable. I didn't know what that meant, you know. I think it's just, there is something very magical about understanding the source of something, about understanding the story behind it, about like looking at your plate of food and realizing that you know the tree that you know, avocado came from. You understand where that piece of fish came from, that you understand the source of your necessities. And so I think in a way that's what I try to incorporate into my life the most, because that's what gives me connection. That's what makes me feel like I don't know, feel connected to a part of something bigger, feel like a true, I have no other word than connection, but it's a true like connection to it. And I understand it, like I feel it, and it makes it have value to me. And I think, you know, in a lot of ways, that's where with this whole plastic issue, I think that's why, you know, I kind of was just taken aback when I realized, you know, how many things I just don't understand. I don't understand the source of them. And that seems kind of scary to me. I sometimes just feel like we accept, you know, so many things without questioning it. And I completely do, and I have been my whole life. But the more that I can kind of just uncover that and say, okay, but what can I understand in my life? That's what makes me feel the happiest. And I think that that's something, you know, obviously we're all different. We're all different people, but I do think that that might be something that's part of a human connection. I think it's something that's part of an animal connection. When I look at, you know, animals in the wild, I just feel like when it comes to their absolutely fundamental, you know, necessities, they understand where it comes from. You learn where to get water, where to get shelter, where to get food. And I think with our human race, in a way, we tend to think that we're more civilized if we don't have to think about that connection. You know, if you can just flick on a light and all of a sudden, you know, there it is, or turn on a faucet and there's your water. And same with food, and same with, you know, all these products that we're bringing into our world. You know, that to me is interesting, that's what we consider being civilized. And then the more that you actually have an understanding of the source, or try to, and the more that makes you kind of like savage, or, you know, or something like that. And that to me just has never made sense. And I feel like I can see it in kids, like and adults, but kids, like when you pull a carrot from the ground and you show that kid a carrot, or I show them a fish, or they watch someone make a fire, something in their soul lights up. Because I do think in a way, it gives us more meaning. It gives a lot of our lives more meaning. And so if anything, and I hope I'm answering your question, I think what I'm trying to do is just live a life with meaning. And a lot of that I find in kind of simplifying things and going back to the source.
Definitely answering my question. And I mean, I appreciate just highlighting the disconnect, but also the connect. I think that's so much of this problem is based in a disconnect, and the more and more we connect to the simplest things, as you're saying, and the everyday choices, then we get closer and closer to the solutions right in front of us too. So yeah, thank you for sharing those perspectives. Mm-hmm. And Max and Kevin, you both have been hanging tight for a little while there too, and want to get your perspectives in here also. So Kevin, I'm curious, because you work in this space of the Papahānaumokuākea Marine Islands that is so untouchable to most people, and yet it has all of this massive problem of plastic pollution. And I'm curious how you take those stories that are so far away and not in our day-to-day lives, they are away actually, and bring more and more people into the movement by sharing your experiences up there. And also, how do you deal with it mentally, seeing so much devastation in such a remote place?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's definitely the challenge. You know, it's a place that you can't go unless you have a permit for a research activity or conservation activity or a cultural activity. And so like, that's the challenge. Like nobody can go there and see it unless you're doing any one of those things. And so for us, like at our organization is kind of a mantra actually, to say that if you love something, it's easier to want to protect it. And so using what you love about a place, like a specific place, as a motivation for solving an issue is kind of the angle that we take on it, because what else can you do? Like, you know, the issue of marine debris, it's totally a downer. Like, you know, just like the movie was a bit of a downer, super good, but a bit of a downer. And so this idea that that number one, that to be able to solve an issue like that, you have to use science, or you have to be a scientist, right? That science has kind of, in a way, hijacked the idea of nature, and that if you're just a nature lover, that you can't really do anything about it. But also that the doom and gloom associated with the issue is oftentimes turns people away. And like when we're among friends and like-minded people, it's super easy to talk about this issue because we're all nodding our heads and we all get it. But for the people that don't get it, focusing on the doom and gloom doesn't necessarily turn them around. And so what we do is we focus on a place, and that is Papahānaumokuākea, and all the amazing things that there are to love about that place. And we hope that that can kind of rub off, and everybody out there in the world loves a place. There's not a single person that doesn't love some place out there in nature. And so if you can kind of relate this process of like, wow, what is it that I love? How is that issue affecting the place that I love? And how can we rally a community around that place? And by virtue of that issue, I feel like that's how you can bring people in, not by telling people they're doing something wrong, because people are told that every single day. And so for us, that's what it's about, like sharing, you know, really amazing photos, and then also like taking the aspect of Papahānaumokuākea and how amazing it is in terms of ecology, endangered species, culturally, it's super important. It's just a really incredibly unique place, and taking that as like sort of putting it on a pedestal and saying like, look at this place that's supposed to be the most amazing of all places on earth. You know, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And then saying, hey, look at how this issue is affecting it. And so you might walk down to Kailua Beach, you know, and unless you're spending a lot of time up at you know, like Kaiana Point or something, you're not going to see the albatross that are choking on monofilament, and you're not going to see the monk seals that are tangled up in fishing gear, all the dead bird carcasses everywhere filled with plastic. And so for us, it's like being sort of a fishbowl, I guess, or like the prime example of like, look, this place is being affected in this crazy way by this issue. And you might not see that in your day-to-day life, but like, wow, this is supposed to be this incredible place, and yet here it is affected like this. So relating that to your own home beach or your own home waterway or whatever is something that we hope to do. That's kind of the approach that we take there. Just, you know, we just love that place. So.
Yeah, thank you again. Just I'm blown away by all the perspectives that you guys are all bringing to the table, and I think they all tie together so well. So, and thank you for the work you do. And for those who didn't see it, about a year ago, 60 Minutes shared a story, essentially all the story of plastics, and Kevin and his work in the monument was featured in that. And it was really, thank you for doing that too, because that does, I mean, 60 Minutes is watched by millions and millions of people around the world. So thank you for telling the story in that forum.
Yeah, we got a lot of feedback from interesting people on that one. People in the heartland, you know, that aren't anywhere near an ocean. I have a high school principal in South Dakota that we've been in contact since then, and he's created a nonprofit over there called Landlocked, with the last two words being ED for education, and it's all about plastics and how even places like that can have an impact on the ocean. He's got his students all amped about it and everything, and it's just awesome to see what you know, how that reached people over there. So
yeah, amazing. So well, and thank you for telling that story in that forum. Like I said, it's the work that we need to do and getting it out into broader audiences. Yeah, thank you. Max, I want to come to you. And so in your work with the Center for Biological Diversity, and you're a lawyer, you're kind of our sneaky badass who protects things behind the scenes very unassumingly, but then comes with a hammer too. So you helped the center and Sustainable Coastlines and Surfrider led us into a lawsuit against the EPA, but with the intent of strengthening laws on plastics in our waterways. Can you tell us about that lawsuit a little bit, and where you think the rule of law has a place in all of the solutions to this?
Yeah, first of all, just a big mahalo to all of our panelists, to Raf for setting this up, for all of our community members that are watching this, for this tiny one, also, you know, the next generation coming up that I'm going to be stoked to pass the torch to. It's just so inspiring to be here with you folks on this Sunday, and just a big mahalo, heartfelt, for all the work that you guys are doing. The law is one tool, right? So you asked us to think about, you know, how folks can get involved, especially young in their careers, and what's one avenue. And so the law and policy is what I focus on. I spent a long time in the Hawaii State Senate working, and then now focusing primarily on litigation. And the Clean Water Act is one of our bedrock laws, federal laws, to protect our waterways. And up until now, plastic has not been classified as a pollutant, which is wild. I mean, who's looking at plastic and being like, yeah, this should be in the ocean? 0% of the population, you know? And so here for us in Hawaii, it boggled my mind. And it's something that, you know, in many different times in our lives, Raf and I talked about, like, how are we going to hold the industry accountable? Well, the first step to that is holding our regulatory agencies accountable. And in this instance, it's the State of Hawaii Department of Health, and it's the Federal Environmental Protection Agency. And the lawsuit was basically, I'm not going to bore you guys with the legalese. It basically is just to say, you need to look at the data that demonstrates that plastic is a pollutant and creates what's called these impaired waterways. And the Department of Health here in Hawaii has refused to look at that data. EPA has said, that's fine, do what you guys like do. And so we sued. And we are now in settlement negotiations. And before going into those settlement negotiations, EPA actually withdrew their approval of DOH's list of impaired waterways, which they have to do every 2 years under this federal law. And now Hawaii has to look at plastic. And bigger than that, and something like my dad always said, is we're all in the va'a together. We're all in this canoe together. So it's not just about Hawaii's waterways, right? It's about, and I told EPA this, we can sue in every state. That's fine. Like, we can keep going with this, or you guys can come out with a federal, you know, rules and regulation, a practicing policy document that shows that that's important for each jurisdiction to look at. And so that's really what we're trying to push with this. And like I said, it's just one tool, right? It's just one tool in the toolbox. I don't even think I'm really that great at it, to be honest. So anyone who's not dyslexic and loves to read and write, please go to law school. It's great. You'll be intrigued to find all of these other mechanisms to hold folks accountable, to protect our homes and to protect our resources and to protect our way of life. And yeah, so we're really excited to see what's coming up the pipeline for that. But something just to talk about, like when we talk about what does that water bottle cost me, you know, right? So it's something like to get us all to really think about. And what does it cost me? It's cost more than buying that water bottle. I've already paid for it 3 times over as a taxpayer to the federal government. As an Indigenous person, like I might have my own qualms with that, right, as well. But regardless, I'm a good tax-paying American, right? So I'm already subsidizing the extraction of fossil fuels, right? So what is that? Plastics are made from that. That's maybe $20 billion, right? So I'm already paying to that. Then I'm already paying to the cost of cleaning up the plastics in our environment. That's to the tune of what, $500 billion annually. And then we keep going down that production pipeline, right? Until we get to, you know, what can I do as a citizen? What can I do as a taxpayer? What can I do as you know, a fisherwoman, as a surfer, as a scientist? And it's this, right? It's all of us getting engaged and using our, you know, Patty, oh my gosh, the chicken skin from that video. I've seen it maybe 3 or 4 times now, and it's just so incredible. You know, it's the same thing in the environmental movement. It's like, you know, it's thought of as just this, like, I don't know, old white kind of straight culture. And so it's just so incredible to see that. It's so incredible to see Doshi's work. It's Cliff, like to talk about our privilege as being here in our home, having access to clean water. It's just, anyways, I'm just really, thank you folks for invigorating me again to wake up in the morning tomorrow morning and to keep doing the work. And anybody who's listening to this that wants to think about environmental law, please reach out to me. I'd love to talk story. And yeah, just a big mahalo again.
Yeah, mahalo, Max. I mean, incredible work that you are doing behind the scenes to push the realms a little bit farther in places that need to be pushed too, because we talk about individual change on many levels, and it's so important because individual change leads to larger things, but we also have to move the needle on institutional change too, to get this moving at the speed and pace that we need to really get this mess cleaned up and the changes happening, and really reconnect to everything, as Kimi brought up so often, reconnect into our day-to-days, but it's going to take changing our institutions in order for that to happen. So mahalo for doing that and bringing us into the fold of doing that too. So we're getting close to 7. There are still a bunch of questions that have been coming in through YouTube Live. I think everybody's gone around and spoken once or twice so far. I would love to open it up to any of you for the next 10 minutes to answer a couple of questions about the times that we are in right now. So as COVID-19 has crossed across the world, there's been lots of dialogue from the plastics industry that plastics are the solution, that they can sanitize everything. And so there's a pushback against anti-plastic legislation or work. That's one of the questions that came up. And again, just continuing, like, how do we continue to combat those narratives, to work in our daily lives, to really be part of the solutions? So I don't want to call on anyone specifically this time. If people want to raise their hand and speak out, I would be happy to, if you can keep it to a minute or two, and we'll try and get everybody out of here.
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick. Quickly, I just wanted to address Mallory's question, the student there. First off, thank you so much for wanting to get involved in environmentalism at such a young age. That's amazing. And I think follow what you like to do. I was a marketing major. I never thought I would be working in plastic pollution. My skill set is in interpersonal salesmanship, and I was able to turn that into a career working in plastics. So there's no specific textbook route you need to take. Do whatever makes you happy and have fun with it, because that's how you're going to want to get involved. That's my 2 cents regarding that. And also in regards to the overarching of getting more people involved in the movement, as you saw in the story of plastic, it wasn't just focused on sea life or animals getting injured. It was focused on the human effects of plastics production, the human effects of where our plastic gets exported to. So connecting the human element to this, on how this isn't just a nature issue, it's a people issue, and how we all are connected as one, as Cliff was talking about, going down to a molecular level. And like, that's important. Focusing on people is going to get a lot of people turned on to this issue. And in regards to the COVID-19, real quickly, and the narratives that are getting pushed out by industry on plastics being safer than reusables, remember, this is a war that we're in. It's not just one battle. And if this COVID-19 and the industry pushing against single-use pushing for more single-use plastics right now, like, that's just one element of this. And a big part of what they're doing is a distracting element for this. They want us to go tit for tat with them, but we need to remind ourselves of the much larger long-term war that we're in with this. So it's okay to be upset about things getting potentially turned around, or even a moratorium put on ordinances and bans right now. It's okay to feel that, but just remember that it's a much bigger picture than that.
Yeah, thanks, Doshi, for adding into that. Does anybody have any other thoughts they'd like to share just on the, like I said, in the current situation that we're in right now, or perspectives within that question?
Yeah, I'll say something on that one. I think it's there's definitely kind of a silver lining here. Like definitely people are using more plastic, rubber gloves, and all this, the medical supplies and everything like that. But at the end of the day, like, I don't know about you guys, but I'm eating at home with my family and eat meals at home with all her aunties and uncles. And like, we're just, we're cooking meals collectively together. We're actually, I think, using or making less waste. And I think we're just sort of collectively realizing how much less we kind of need. You know, don't need to eat out. You don't need those takeout containers, that kind of thing, where you do it creatively. And so I think we might have an opportunity here to kind of like come down to earth a little bit from our busy, hectic, kind of wasteful lives and kind of re-examine what we got. So that's kind of what's happening for me, at least.
Yeah, thanks for that, Kevin. Nicole, I know you were had your hand up for this also.
Yeah, I wanted to highlight that again, along the lines of silver lining in Hawaii, we're actually seeing a decrease in the amount of trash that's being sent to our incinerator. It's down by at least 13%. And while things may be more complicated right now because single-use plastic is being pushed, we're able to see measurable impact of what Kevin just described, the, you know, staying at home, purchasing less, and what the visitor industry in Hawaii in particular is contributing. So we've gone down to 300 or 30,000 people coming into Hawaii per day to less than 1,000. And what can we take away from that and use to turn into policy that can help guide us towards maintaining this reduction, because that's pretty exciting. And I'd also like to say that in Hawaii, I think the conversation is hopeful in that most of our counties have not rescinded on our single-use plastic policy. One has a temporary moratorium. So for as much negative pushback as we might see, there's a lot of success with decision makers looking at the evidence and saying, you know, no, that doesn't make sense.
Nicole, while we have your attention on this too, there were a couple questions just to speak a little bit more deeply about the toxicity of incineration beyond just the greenhouse gas emissions, but is there something more there? And then the second piece to that is, how do we put this responsibility more back onto the industry and not on the individual?
There's a lot to say there, and I'll be cognizant of time. I don't think I mentioned this. My graduate thesis was looking at H-Power as, which is our incinerator here on Oahu, as a human health issue, as an environmental health issue, as an environmental justice issue. And one of the things we don't do a great job of here is tracing the links between the communities who live near the incinerator, which on our island is predominantly Hawaiian communities, and the health impacts they're experiencing. We do have data from lots of other places in the world where you can see how the dioxins, which is one of the chemicals that comes from burning plastic, are infiltrating into people's bodies. Mercury on Oahu, our incinerator is the highest contributor to mercury in our environment, which is something we're all pretty clear on not being a good thing. So I would be happy to follow up with people on more of that human health data, and quickly on the producer accountability piece. You know, I've struggled with this a lot because personal change is important. It's the way to get people engaged. And I feel like we've been duped a little bit and asked to focus on, you know, getting each other to not use the water bottles or the cups, and all of that matters and is important. But how do we do that and also focus our energy to saying, hey, stop feeding us plastic cups. We didn't want the plastic cup in the first place. And getting involved with policy, local policy, is a good, easy way to do that. You can write testimony to your local legislators. They're there to listen to you. And I think finding your voice there is a great way to end up doing what Max is doing and using your voice in other places too.
Yeah, thank you for that. And one of the questions or from Mary that came in was wanting to know some of the positives and wins in all of this. And that's a good transition too, because we did have some really big wins in Hawaii, specifically on Bill 40 passing on Oahu, which is restricting a lot of single-use plastics. And Maui just passed a very similar bill to that as well. And I think that beyond just the success of passing the legislation on why that's a success story is because of how the community rallied together to use their voices. At the Bill 40 hearing, we had over 2,000 people write in support and less than 100 in opposition. And we had students showing up in hearing rooms, rolling out scrolls with signatures for more than 1,500 students. And Doji had a great comment about Dyson, who helped lead that in his rap there. And so that's a huge win. The communities across the board are coming together to fight against this issue and to uplift the solutions. Another question that I wanted to come back to, and Jacqueline, this would be a great one from you from Kokua's perspective. Kimi, it would be a great one from you as a new mother too, with your little one sitting there. And really, what are the solutions for hands-on activity, or this when we don't have the opportunity right now for hands-on cleanups and activities? How are we getting this information out to the youth and encouraging them to be part of the solution?
Yeah, beach cleanups really are a great agents of change when you go out there and see plastics firsthand. Right now, due to the current situation, Kokua Hawaii Foundation, we actually have a lot of great resources on our website. We have plastic-free carnival games that you can make at home with typical items that you would throw away. And they're fun, interactive activities you could do with kids or adults at home when they have comprehensive how-tos and issues with plastics incorporated into each game. I want to give Algalita a shout out. They made a really great viewing guide for educators to go along with the story of plastics. So if you want to watch the story of plastics, but kind of go into a deeper dive, I highly recommend going over and checking out Algalita's viewer guide. And I also recommend just kind of trying to get outside if you can, but if you can't get outside, just Surfrider, they just put out a really great blog. It's called an Ocean Friendly Home blog, and it encourages family to go do a plastic audit in your household to see where you have a lot of single-use plastics or plastic items, and then maybe trying to figure out what items you could sub out for reusable options or plastic jars. And it's a great activity to do at home with the kids. Yeah, I don't know if Kimi wants to add anything to that. I see Buddy there. He looks so cute.
Okay, unmuted. Well, first of all, I'm really sorry because I'm not really into Zoom, and so I thought no one could see me when I wasn't talking. So I hope that wasn't too distracting when I nursed Buddy. But this is my son, and I guess as a new mom, I mean, I'm really just learning as I go. But I just think it's for kids. It's about the positive, and it's about anything that that I can do to show him how magical this world is, whether it's inside our home or in our backyard or whatever it is, because I do believe that it is about building that connection, and anytime we love something, we love someone, I think we do feel that sense of responsibility to protect it. And just quickly back to the question about, what do we do about the argument that, with the times that we're in now and how using reusable items aren't safe or whatnot. I was afraid of that too, but I actually was surprised. I have a little company and we sell reusable utensil kits, and I actually started getting purchases from people because they're saying, well, now I really don't want to take single-use plastic when I go get takeout because I don't know where that's been or who's touched that or where it came from. At least when it's my own stuff and I can clean it and I can care for it and I can keep it with me, I know that it's all good. And that was really surprising and refreshing to me just to hear that, but it's true. And that's one thing that I found in just, these times where everyone is just trying to live, or, being forced to live, a lot of us, a lot more simply, that people are starting to see the value in caring for things. And I think that's something that single-use plastic takes out of our mentality, is actually caring for the things that we use. You're taught not to care, you're taught to use it once and toss it. And that's a very dangerous mentality. And so I'm thinking that in these times of slowing down and staying home, hopefully more of us can just be learning that, everything we touch, we should care for. And really quickly, whoa, buddy, really quickly, Mallory, I would say, when it comes to what's the best way to get involved, only you are going to know the best way for you, because in my opinion, the best way is diversity. And that's why I just feel so touched about everyone that spoke today. And Patty, the video you put out, and the hate that it's making me tear up, but the hate that you might have received, congratulations, because adversity is a sign that you're actually doing something, that you're actually creating change. And that's our superpower, is that we're all different. Every single, one of us on this planet, we're different people, and we have something different to bring to the table. And you're gonna get adversity for being different, but that's what is going to make us whole in the long run, is if we all show up with our different strengths, and we're not all going to agree, but if we're going to have those hard conversations and we're going to stir things up a little bit, at least we are activating, everyone's minds. At least we're creating some form of awareness, and it's not going to be comfortable. But I think that's our job. Yeah.
Thank you, Kimmy. That was, absolutely beautiful way to tie a lot of those things together. And I want to go back to the idea that you talked about love. We went from the hate that Patty got, but the love that really brings us into caring about things and to protecting things in the future. And Patty, I'd love to hear your perspective on that, because at the end of that clip that we showed, we saw those videos of the letters of love to Mother Nature, and our education director Rebecca does something similar and has students in classes write love letters to the sea. But can you tell us a little bit about that experience and getting people to write into their love letters?
Yeah. So are we ready for what us drag queens call a wig off moment? We're gonna have a wig off moment. We're gonna get really real. Plus that wig is so hot. Oh my God. So I think that, kind of said this earlier, but I think we forget that we are nature. I think we forget that we are all connected. And I think we forget the power of love. I think we very often forget that shame and hate never worked as motivators. So I am after a Trojan horse of love, but then slap them with that plastic bag on their face, just like someone mentioned with surfing, Doshi. I'm after love being a vehicle for also truth. I'm not there for it to be fluffy love. I think it's tough love a lot of the time, but I think that love is a very powerful thing. And I think that good vibes attract good vibes, and love attracts love. And I think that so many of us and so many of you who are listening all have a story to tell. And I think that's what Kimmy was talking about so much too. And I think that my piece of advice during COVID-19, and my piece of advice always, is tell your story. Tell your story of who you are, be true to who you are, and then also share how you got passionate about this stuff, because I think that people think that the title of caring about the environment or being zero waste or being an environmental advocate are these far off concepts that someone has to bestow upon you. And now I dub you queen of the nature. It doesn't happen that way. But I think that if we can tell our story and we can tell it true to who we are and we can be true to who we are, those are the most powerful things we have. They're the most powerful tools we have. And that is who we are. That's not the tool we put in our hands. So during COVID-19, it's a beautiful time to storytell. And I think we should totally tell our stories. And with social media and with the blogs and with how connected we are, everyone listening to this, I know, can tell their story somehow. And now is a better time than ever to write and reflect on your story, write and reflect about how you got passionate about plastic, how you got passionate about the environment, dig into that, realize what else you could become passionate about during this time, realize new solutions to communicate what's up, make plans to make a film with someone, reach out to one of these people on this conversation thing, including myself, and say, hey, I want to fuck shit up with you. Can I do it? Awesome. Let's do this. I think it's going to take us banding together and using our tools well together to really make progress happen. And I think that love and that energy and that thump behind is really there with this. And I think that we are, wow, I sound so cliche, but I think that it's going to take that. And I think that we can all tell our stories and we all have a voice. So let's do it.
Thank you for that. Love it. And I love connecting all the stories. And I kind of want to do that to get us wrapped up on this. We're at 7:15 and have tried to answer as many of the questions that came through as possible, but I would love to give everybody, I'm going to switch us back to our gallery view here for everybody to see, because we're talking about connecting all of us together. And would love if everybody can give a minute of wrapping up this story and what's next for us together. That would be wonderful. So we can start with you, Doshi.
So I've been super stoked for the world to see this film for about 1.5 years now, from when I was on location in the Philippines and in Indonesia to then being involved in Long Beach with it. And now that it's finally out to the world, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to want to get involved and get motivated. And I encourage you to do so in whatever way feels right for you, whether that's you calling your local nonprofit to see how you can lend a hand with their work, to calling your local council members, to talking to local businesses. If you prefer to donate financially, that's a way to contribute also. But this is an issue that's going to be a multi-generational solution. There's no silver bullet solution. There's thousands of different types of plastic products out there. There are going to be just as many solutions that we're all going to be contributing to. And I want to welcome you all to the global movement. Everybody who's viewing this and everybody who watched the story of plastic, you are now a member of our team, and thank you so much. And thank you for being a colleague. I appreciate that. And this is just the beginning. And no matter what you do, remember to always make it fun and to always find a way to stay stoked. Thank you.
Thanks, Doshi. You're awesome. Kevin, do you want to add something?
Sure. I think we all come from all these different backgrounds, and we're tackling the problem in different ways, all leading towards the same thing. And I think our challenge going forward is going to be to continue to work on this from every angle, and while we do that, not alienating anyone, and really working to empower everyone in all walks of life and every single discipline to really just empower them to be able to feel like they can have an impact, or they can be part of a movement. And once we do that, I think we're on a path to success with this one. But thanks everybody for all your work. It's awesome.
Thank you. Cliff, how about you? And you're in the dark, maybe lean a little closer in.
Yeah, I'm excited to get in the light. No, but can you guys see me okay right there? Sorry, I'm outside with the termites. But I'm just excited to kind of expand the community with everyone. I mean, I'm kind of excited to continue working with Sustainable Coastlines Hawaii, but I'm really excited to extend with little buddy and seeing where he starts to come along with Uncle, and with Patty, communities that I don't think I ever thought that I would participate in, coming from a small town on the Big Island. So I think it's just really exciting. You know, it's cool to see that this, even though it's digital, is going to really help facilitate some cool change coming up. And those who are watching at home, if there's something that I can do to participate in your communities, please reach out. I'm sure Raf will provide you with my contact information. So mahalo nui, aloha nui.
Hey, Cliff, can you teach me how to surf in high heels?
For sure.
Okay. That'll be in the works in the future. Just wanted to ask you before Zoom kicked us off.
I love all the connections that are developing just between our panelists, who some have never connected until these moments. So yeah, I continue to be blown away by all these responses. You want to continue the story wrapping up, Max?
You know, the biggest thing, this is a secret. Shh, don't tell anyone. Just do it. That's Uncle Mac Poi Poi on Moloka'i's thing. He's like, what? Just do it, right? What, Nike said that? No, I said that. Just do it. And like, just do it. Whatever that it is, right? For you, for your now, for your community, for yourself. And this time, just do it. Just get involved. Just educate yourself. You know, that's the biggest power in this, is just to really get your teeth in, understand your own place in it, understand your community's place in it, understand our complicit nature in the corporation's profits in this, and get involved. Just do it. So.
Yes, absolutely. The bluntness of it is what we need too, is just get involved. Thank you. Jacqueline, how about you?
Yeah, just echoing what everyone's saying so far, is really just get involved in where you feel the most passionate in this movement. If that's with the education side, working with kids, if it's with legislation, giving testimony, if it's out cleaning the beach, or if it's working on a whole different ballgame that none of us are focused on, just get out there and try, just do it. Like Max was saying, we all need you. Everyone needs you in this movement, and all the different movements out there. Whatever you feel the most passionate about, just get out and do it. And I want to reiterate what we spoke to earlier, is that no one is perfect on this panel or in the zero waste movement, and we don't need anyone to be perfect. We all have to be imperfect in whatever we're doing. So just get out there and try your best, and keep learning, and keep being inspired by others, and then hopefully you and self will inspire others to do changes in your everyday life. So yeah, just get involved.
Thank you. Yeah, and I love that the not everybody's perfect commentary. None of us are, and that's keeping that in our mind. And as we get your last thoughts, Nicole, I know it's something Zero Waste Oahu works on too. Is the nobody's perfect, but we can still all work on this. So any closing thoughts from you?
Yeah. One, I'm in awe of everybody on this panel, everybody watching. Thank you for taking your Sunday evening to figure out how to get involved, to share your stories. My closing thought is vulnerability, and the balance between that and holding a line is not easy. It's okay to stand up and say things aren't okay. And it's just as important to be fumbling your way through communicating that things aren't okay and not being okay yourself. But that, you know, I'm wanting to support local restaurants, and I'm bringing styrofoam home sometimes. And I have an organization called Zero Waste Oahu. So I think vulnerability connects us. Vulnerability makes scary problems less scary. And that in this time of COVID-19, I think there's something beautiful in learning how vulnerability connects us. We're so vulnerable here, and we have rallied to make some major transformations to the way we are doing things. And there's a lot to say about that. But the highlight there is we can change. We do it all the time. We've done it before. We'll do it again. And I think that's beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, and I've been amazed at the vulnerability across the board of this group and sharing things, and that if everybody kind of follows that lead, beautiful things are going to come out of it too. So yeah, thank you for that perspective. Kimi, do you want to add some final thoughts?
Sure. And it might be redundant, but yeah, I would say ditto. Basically, I think one of the worst crimes we can commit is when we like let that facade of perfection serve as an attack against good. And I think that is something that often happens when we get motivated and when we get on these missions, is we start to look at other people and just say, you know, oh, you're doing it wrong. So I would just really try and stay away from that and really make room for everyone and listen to yourself and listen to, you know, whatever feels the most right for you to act upon. But don't spend that precious energy where you could be, you know, doing your own good to pick apart what someone else like is doing. If there's somebody who's trying, you know, like use that as an opportunity to have a conversation. Like I said earlier before we were live, you know, I met Kevin over a decade ago, and I remember, you know, I was getting offered, you know, some sponsorship from some drink that comes in a plastic bottle, and this was way before I was informed on these types of things. And he just so nicely said to me, and he was probably so educated, but instead of just saying like, well, if you say yes, you're polluting my ocean, you know, our oceans. Instead, he just said, wow, that's really cool. Maybe you should ask them if they would consider doing glass instead. And I just said, well, it's recyclable, right? And you know, and we just had a whole conversation where he broke down to me that isn't necessarily the solution for all. And that's something that really stuck with me. I didn't take that sponsorship, but that's not the point. The point is that when we are different and doing different things, it creates an opportunity to have really meaningful conversation. But if that conversation starts with an attack because someone's not perfect, then all we're going to be doing is wasting our time attacking each other. And I just think that when it comes to the people who are out there trying, those are especially the ones you want to embrace. Or when it comes to the ones who aren't trying, maybe those are the ones you want to invite in. So that's all.
Perfect. Thank you for tying more of this together too. And yeah, I'm almost speechless from all of this too. So I'm gonna try and wrap it up. Patty, did you have any last words on this story too to say?
Retweet what everyone else said. Unreal. Seriously. Y'all are masters at this. I am a young fetus human. Y'all have dedicated so much of your life to this. And I can only imagine that there are like so many people that are listening to this that have done so much for this and so much to help invite people in, and more of that. That's beautiful.
Thank you. Wow. Well, I mean, like I said, I'm almost speechless from all of this, but I do want to wrap it up to all of our panelists. I mean, you guys have been on this for almost 2.5 hours now, getting on early to introduce each other. So just thank you, mahalo for giving your time in this. First and foremost, your perspectives are beautiful, moving, transformational. And I think that people who tuned in are probably going to have a lot of tools to go forward and feel like they have access to being part of a solution in this. That the story of plastic may have left us feeling a bit overwhelmed. And I think that you are helping take people out of the overwhelm and into feeling like there are ways forward. So again, mahalo to all of you for doing that. We're going to have all of these resources available. This has been recorded on YouTube Live, and so it'll be on the Sustainable Coastlines Hawaii YouTube channel. Anybody, please do share it. Anybody who tuned in tonight. Thank you all who tuned in to YouTube Live from our community, and and spend the time to listen to these incredible people give their perspectives. Please, like I said, share that in the future. And our Sustainable Coastlines Hawaii team would definitely like me to say too that we're going to be working on a resource packet. Doshi and Rebecca have been working on this together amongst others, and we'll collaborate with everybody who is on this call tonight and get their contact information, give ways into the different work that they're doing that you can all be involved in. And yeah, we'll follow up this week to everybody who signed up via email. You can sign up on our email list on sustainablecoastlineshawaii.org too, if you didn't already do that. Again, I'm overwhelmed with gratitude for all of you and for everybody who is a part of this. Thank you, mahalo. Yeah, everybody want to wave goodbye to our audience.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Hallelujah.
All right. Aloha, everybody, and keep tuning in. We'll have so much more for you in the future. Aloha.